So I would love to hear about your key learnings from your time at HubSpot. Very few people get to build a startup after having worn a growth marketer hat, right? And so just very curious as to how that has influenced your starting at Keo as well as building out your viewership from your newsletter.
Sure. So my experience from HubSpot has been very interesting. I think I came out of HubSpot thinking I was unbreakable. You know, it's a fast growing company. And so when you're at a fast growing company, you're like, everything is just moving up and to the right. And so it's super exciting. Everything is like you're getting yes to everything you want to do. Your bosses trust you, all that sort of stuff. And then I started a company and investors were saying no. And I was like, what do you mean you're saying no? Like everyone always said yes to me. So it's like a very different, it was a very humbling experience, but it's also a very different experience because you come in, and I saw a tweet about this too, about someone saying like, people from like be cautious when you're hiring people from fast growing startups. It doesn't always mean they're not great, but it just means they might have had like all the resources to grow really quickly, and can they do that in an environment where things aren't growing quickly, which I thought was very fascinating as like a self-reflection as well. And so it's been very interesting because I do feel like I learned a lot at HubSpot about people and culture and how to look at really making sure that your team is more than just a working team, but a team that has some sort of culture embedded into it, that everyone's enjoying time together, but also like respectful people's lives. So I think the biggest thing I probably took over is we had a, even though we all work all the time, so I don't know if it's working great, but we had what do you call it? An unlimited vacation policy. And the idea wasn't that people were taking like huge vacations all the time. It was just like, you have a doctor's appointment. If you need an extra Friday off because you're going to your cousin's wedding, like just go. Like it shouldn't be like, oh, I need to request a day off. Like, you know what I mean? So that's like that kind of flexibility is what we've definitely brought into the startup, where like if someone needs a day off, like no questions asked, like you get paid for the work that you get done, not for the hours you put in. But the other parts were kind of tough because I focused so much on marketing that when we were building the company, like I was telling all my pitch decks as a story, which worked in some cases, but not in others. And I know everyone says, oh, your pitch is a story, but in a lot of places it really isn't. People love to say it's a story, but really investors just want to hear the same like few slides around like business development, metrics, traction, etc. And so there are some places where our story worked really, really well, and that's what I know how to do, is be a storyteller. But there are other places that were like, we just want the raw numbers of how this is going to work, what the traction is, what the plan is. So that was like an interesting back and forth because I was so used to selling a story and then knowing that like I'll hit it no matter what, versus investors want you to really hear more of the business plan, which oftentimes changes so many times. And I think that's what was interesting for me, because when I was at HubSpot, our path to the goal changed sometimes weekly. Like it wasn't about how you were going to get there. It's just that you had to get there. And so we knew what the goal was, and we tried so many different experiments. And so it was interesting for me to now have to sit and like make up how we were going to get there, because I knew that it was going to be a very experimental process and things were going to change every week. And maybe I could tell you it's going to be a social media strategy and it might end up being like a placement strategy. There's just so many different ways and you don't really know until you test and try. So that was weird for me to have to make up how we're going to get there versus just selling a story of what it's going to be and then our team doing the work to make it. With Below the Fold, my experience translates over a lot more because I was on like the content and marketing side at HubSpot. And so I already know how to grow a content business, how to market it, how to get interest towards it. But now I'm doing it with an audience of zero versus that, you know, at HubSpot, I had a huge audience to work with. So, but I know what all the tactics are. And so that's been really helpful to focus on creating the content business.
Fantastic.